Welcome to the Near Memo, a weekly conversation about search, social, and commerce. What happened, why it matters, and the implications for local. So let me segue into something that's going to get into your discussion, Mike, which is the idea of trust and credibility in online content. So if reviews are perceived to be less and less credible, and they certainly are in my world, I'm increasingly turning to expert reviews and turning away from consumer reviews around products. And I find myself more and more dissatisfied with search results in a lot of situations, like just third parties promoting themselves and crap content. You found an item that is an interesting alternative to the existing sort of treatment of search results. Why don't you talk about that?
So Google, as we know at I/O, they announced several major AI initiatives. MUM, which is a language analysis initiative to replace BERT, which is already very sophisticated, but it looks at words in context so it understands more about the sentence. They talked about Lambda D, I think it's called, which is a AI to actually complete sentences based on starting words and categorical sort of definitions. So kind of like GPT-3 AI, it actually writes documents for you. That's their Lambda product. And they talked about their ability to understand the content in images, which I know from my personal experience has been growing exponentially over the last several years. And so there's those three sort of foundational things. And then I found this paper called Rethinking Search, Making Experts Out of Dilettantes, that was written by 4 Googlers for the ARXIV conference. And they discuss how there's a need that their goals require both a rethinking of how information is organized top to bottom, using these 3 tools, getting rid of the knowledge graph, which they not getting rid of it, but they perceive the knowledge graph as being very limited to only expose limited number of facts. They call that the dilettante. And so their goal is to create a new indexing system that removes this whole idea of traditional retrieval, sort of storage, retrieval, ranking, picking out the right piece to answer the question, into a model-based sort of storage, using these 3 elements to literally, the best way I can summarize is you ask a question, or drop in an image and a question, they can then write a detailed Wikipedia-like response with references. So they can show you where all their knowledge came from, why they're saying it, and basically write a full exposition as an answer, include images and compare them. So they gave the example at I/O that you used certain shoes to climb Mount Hood. Would they be good enough to climb Mount Fuji? Well, they have to understand what Mount Hood is, what Mount Fuji is, and then extrapolate the type of hiking conditions based on things they've read in any language, and then write a new answer to it. It's pretty ambitious. And as you pointed out, could deal with local search.
Well, it could deal with a lot of things. It remains to be seen, but it's sort of, they're doing a bit of that with snippets now, where you get a highlight on the page where the snippet is extracted from. So it's interesting that they can match.
Pure dilettante.
Yes. Dilettante is not a positive word, by the way, in my
I
mind.
know that.
So
it isn't in the papers either. I can't imagine the people on local liking being called.
Well,
dilettantes,
it's not. It doesn't inspire confidence. But as you pointed out, I think before we started today, that there was we were talking about duplex, and one of the other things that we're not really talking about is Google's test in Italy to use the Google Assistant and Google Duplex to solicit business information as a way to set up GMB profiles, as opposed to the current way, which is manually claim and then populate your profile. And you were talking about the time lag between the introduction of that technology, several years ago, and the
2018.
Yeah, so the implementation, so 3 years. So this model that you're describing could be many years away if it ever appears.
Correct. But it reflects several things. And we can see the building blocks happening, and they're using sort of the building blocks. Like we're seeing in the image analysis piece, dramatically improved understanding I've recently gotten access to their API. And so just fascinating what they see in images, all the entities, their ability to label it, their ability to extract what are called semantic triplets from an image. So,
man, woman, camera, TV, that kind of triplet.
Yes, exactly, precisely.
Yeah.
In fact, those are the primary categories into which everything is organized.
I see. But so they can they can take an image and literally extract logic that they can then query about the image. And that's fascinating. So we're seeing parts of this, and we know their ambition is massive.
Well, imagine though, think about this in the context of antitrust. We don't know what this ultimately will look like, but what if the whole world and all the content of the documents and websites and underlying data is then just becomes a source material for Google's own proprietary presentation of that content? I mean, that's even more egregious, if I can use that word, than what we're dealing with today. The zero-click stuff.
Yeah, well, that's what I was just going to say. I'd say a couple. I mean, Google's been moving in this direction with zero-click results, and this is just sort of potentially a smarter way to compile those results. And it fits in with their mission to organize and make accessible all of the world's information. So, I mean, to me, this is what they've been trying to do since they started, and they've finally figured out a technical way that they might be able to achieve it. So I don't see, this doesn't come as a surprise to me necessarily, but I do think there's a certain point at which they're, if they push it too far, publishers are going to opt out of Google, because there's literally there's no value if you're not getting any click-throughs from Google to make your content accessible to them. So I think it could have if they push it too far, it could have a significant downside. Not to say I don't think it should be regulated out of existence if we get to that point, but I do think that there might be some unintended consequences from Google's standpoint.
It's also interesting to think about in terms of non-screen experiences, audio or smart glasses or whatever else may be forthcoming, the car, this mechanism might be well suited to those other kinds of the smart speaker, those other kinds of treatments or formats as well.
Thanks for joining David, Mike, and Greg. To stay on top of the latest developments in local, subscribe to our newsletter at nearmedia.co. We'll see you next week.